All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Ryan Allen. I am currently a computer science teacher, teaching all grades 9 through 12 at Eastern Guilford High School.
I am
Sorry,
Olymp. Oh, sorry.
sorry.
Um,
My name, sorry. Hey, my name is Jolanda Ware. I'm a special education teacher at Peck Expeditionary Elementary.
okay. I'm Olympia Smyre, sixth grade math teacher at Phoenix Academy.
All right, so we can go ahead and jump right into it. So for this week, we had to read chapter 9. Record keeping is more than paperwork. Um, And basically, I guess to summarize it, what I got from it, chapter 9 talked about reframing how teachers think when it comes to record keeping. It explained that record keeping is often viewed as tedious paperwork. Um, but they challenged that it states that record keeping is not just documentation, it's an essential part of teaching and learning practice. I also saw in there that said that when teachers keep meaningful records, they create a map of learning for their students. One that shows where each student started and where they are now and what steps they need to take next. I also wrote down from the chapters that a well-designed record-keeping system keeps teachers' identity patterns in achievement, plan instruction, and communicate progress effectively. And it also stressed that when records are maintained thoughtfully, they do more than store numbers. They tell the story of the learning growth of the students. And they show evidence of understanding, reasoning, and skill development in ways that traditional grade books often fail to capture. Um, and it just talked about how, it takes more, there's more to it than just like keeping grades. I thought this chapter was very informative because it helped me to be able to understand the importance of record keeping. Because I'll be honest, like going into it, this is my second year teaching, but like my first year, I didn't really understand. I didn't really know that there was that much that went into it. I was just the one that kind of just wrote down the grades in the grade book or just kind of, gave the kids a score. But there's more to it than that. It goes more into depth than that, and you really have to kind of like explain like I guess your thought process behind the grades that you give your kids in the grade book. So I just thought that that was I just thought it was very informative and gave her information on that and very helpful to me as a second year teacher.
I agree. I like that it told us about breaking it down into formative and summative assessments. And when I think about progress monitoring for EC students, that's kind of what I do. But I loved how they gave us that chart. Um, Especially let me see, it's on right here on page 262. So like that assessment chart, and then they gave us different forms of assessment charts. The one specifically for math that targeted number sense and computation, it kind of has like a place where you can do the date, the task, and then the students as well. And you have multiple dates, so that kind of reminds me of progress monitoring. And I think that I actually am going to utilize that sheet because I have created a sheet similar to that. But I like the way that they broke it down and just letting students see their growth. It talked more about how when you allow students to participate and actually let them see how they're being progress monitor or how you are record keeping, not just giving them a standard grade, but giving them more so of percentages and using the data in different ways to show them it makes the student participate. And they talked about how the attendance, student participation, attendance, behaviors, all of those things ultimately play into like record keeping. But they ultimately keep they create great work habits for students. And it helps them want to participate and want to engage more. So I really did love chapter 9 because it gave us a lot of information, and a lot of different examples on how to utilize and apply that information to students.
Yeah.
um, I enjoyed chapter 9 as well. I like the fact that I wrote down so much. Like I think I like the fact that it talked about um making sure that if the record, the formative and summative assessment information is separate, and deciding on whether you use the information together will be made during, like, using it to plan your instruction and then going back to revisit it and then refining it throughout the unit you are teaching. I also enjoyed the part where it said record assessment results by learning target assess. Then you can track student progress by learning target, which helps them address learning needs, reteaching it if necessary, offering feedback. And that's under that second, I guess that second part where it says organizing entries in the grade book according to the learning target. And sometimes, like whenever I was putting my grades in, I wasn't doing that. So I liked the idea of organizing it by the standard so you can clearly see, like, this is the standard that you taught and this is what they got and this is what they understood. So I like that part. And then you will be able to see their learning strengths and their needs, and then you're being more equipped, like whenever you do meet with parents, to be able to talk about their needs and what the student is able to give. um Also using the computer programs for grade management, giving student grades, it gives makes a generates the student grades electronically by the data you enter. And that was something that I think I need to use to help with me. um I like the examples it gave with the grade book, and also talked about keeping track of, like, the different students' work habits and their social skills, and being able to separate that from their achievement information. So knowing how they learn things and which way they work while you're doing this assessment, and keeping that data and including it with your data, I think was something that I enjoyed as well. And then the formative assessment, how much detail you record is up to you. And it's determined by what you want to do with the info. You want more than less detail about specific learning targets to guide formative decisions about what needs you need to give or what needs you need to provide for the student. So I also enjoyed that part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Um, I was just gonna say that assessments, the student, of course, we know that the student assessment data ultimately drives our instruction and things of that nature. So one thing that stood out to me too that I forgot to say earlier was the record information by raw score when possible. Um Being an EC teacher, we don't Spire gives us those concepts, and even with number worlds, it gives us the ability to measure them by percentages. But the only time we really use the raw test scores is, like, I guess, for beginning of the year screenings, like the number knowledge test and like the Spire placement test. So when you think about like the core phonics survey and all of those different assessments, those are assessments that's done with like raw score. But I think that it would be beneficial to have more assessments, to utilize more assessments um by actually using it by the raw score. Like if a kid makes a 20 in number worlds, their raw score is a 20, then based on like their grade level, they're really like at a second, third grade equivalent. And then they're like at a like 8 to 9 years old, I think, age range. But allowing them to see that information and allowing them to understand, like, you did do well, but this is where you fall. And then seeing that raw score, that really is beneficial because it helps them want to participate. So I think that if I had more assessments to utilize the raw score when possible, that would be good too. Because I don't. But yeah, that's all I want to say.
Yeah, and I think that goes along with, with keeping the students involved with their record keeping. Because this book talks a lot about like student involvement and getting them like involved in what they're doing, their assessment, so that they can be aware of what they're doing. And then Olympia brought up a point when she was talking about like how, having keeping your records, especially like by learning targets, can kind of help, especially when it comes down to, like she said, when you have like parent teacher conferences with kids, they were able to see everything that you have, and it just makes it a lot easier so that you're not like, because sometimes parents come in there and they're wanting to see like a breakdown of everything. Well, where is it, that my child is struggling? Why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that? But having, you know, the scores set up by learning targets, they can specifically see what area, their child is struggling in. And then there's the students being involved in that as well. They're able to see that and they're able to be like, okay, this is something that I know I need to work on. So I just thought that that was really good. It's definitely something that I'm gonna start implementing because, as a first year teacher, you don't really know what you're doing. You're kind of just going into it blindly. And so there's a lot of things that, reading, not even just in this chapter, but throughout the book that I'm like, it's an eye opener to me that I'm like, I'm definitely going to start implementing this. And this is definitely one of them, making sure that students are involved in the record keeping process. I just think that's really important.
Yeah, and I think like with the record keeping process also that plays into like the student work samples because for me, a lot of the EC data I have to keep student work samples, but it's really hard managing a lot, all of those different work samples for each student. But I have learned that that has been important. And so like over the years, as I've gotten better with my IEP meetings, I bring the student work samples. Like so during the meeting, I'm gonna have like a folder full of that specific students, you know what I mean, what how they're doing. So the parent can see like, okay, this is where we're falling short. Versus just me showing them the grade. So I kind of have learned over the years to because at first I used to just fail to work samples and I used to just be like, okay, my God, I'm like, I gotta put all of this somewhere. It's just getting, but now I'm learning how to break it down to where I am keeping it organized for each student and to where I can pull it out and look at it specifically as well as let the student look at it. So we're progress monitoring those deficits over time and they're seeing like, okay, I see right here, Miss Ware, I kept making P and Q and 9 and I kept getting all of those confused. But now, you know what I mean? I'm not doing that. In January, I'm somewhere else. So them seeing that growth and their parents being able to see it, it is beneficial. So raw scores, um, work samples, just progress monitoring in general, and just being able to have that those summaries like you guys are saying and using those charts back to it again. Those charts are like super amazing because it gives you like a breakdown. And with me, I don't teach like, by the standards and stuff like that you guys teach by. My standards are different because it's EC. So just being able to this chapter, like I said, a lot of information stood out to me and I'm gonna like really be using a lot of the information, but I liked what both of y'all said in regards to, and then Olympia, another thing I wanted to say too, the social emotional, distinguishing the difference, but breaking them down. I liked how you placed emphasis on that because that can get a little tricky, but I have learned that like on Fridays, that's my assessment day. That's my fast bridge day. So that's also my day where I have the student conferences and I show them things and talk to them about things and ask them questions. So I feel like that play in the social skills as well as their academic skills. So I like that with both of you guys.
Yeah, and then also if you think about it, it ties into like I think it was last week's chapter where it was talking about how they needed to know, like you needed to recognize how your students learn or their different culture or things of that nature. That also ties into some of that social emotional stuff that it was talking about keeping track of. So like if you kind of keep track of that and you kind of know where your students are, and then you keep that separate from their achievement information and you keep track of that, then you're able to kind of see which way you need to go as far as what you need to prepare for your students and how they need to grow. I like the examples they give because sometimes we track our data and we put it in there, but we don't like today when I had my O3, which is like our I don't know I don't know how y'all do it, but our O3s are like our meetings with our principals where they tell us like what our data looks like, what we need to work on, and they give us advice on like our teaching and our planning. So she showed me my data from my quizzes and my assessments, my unit assessments. And so she started asking me about what the questions or where my students made mistakes at, but it wasn't documented by the actual target. So I was like, I don't know. Like at first I was like, I didn't know. And I thought about this whole chapter, like had it been documented by the standard or by not even the standard, because they can give you the standard, but that doesn't tell you the target or what that student should have learned from that particular lesson or from that particular you know, question. What was the goal for them to get from this question? Or what should they learn from this particular question? So had I known that, then I felt like I could have answered her question a little bit better. So once she showed me the questions, I was like, oh, okay. So had the data been, lined up accordingly to that, then I felt like I would have been able to say, oh, this is what. So once I realized what she was asking, I was able to say, okay, they didn't know their ratios or they misread that question. It wasn't that they couldn't compare the ratios. They just misread the question and they did not take their time to know that it was, you know, from apples to total shapes or whatever. So I think that made a difference.
Yeah, and I agree with that as well. And I also like the way that you asked that question. They kind of asked at on figure 9.8, like number one, what work habits and social skills do you want to keep track of? Number two, how will you assess and judge level of attainment of each? Number three, what system will you set up to track this information? Number four, how will you summarize student attainment of work habits and social skills? And number five, how will you make clear to students the work habits and social skills they are expected? So I think that them is some like that's so those are similar to what you're saying, Olympia. If you had those
Hmm.
as answer, and if you had those right then and there, that would have made it easier for you to answer questions a little bit easier because that information, those questions would have been, and that's kind of like as an EC teacher going into a new school. I was at one school for 5 years, so I kept record. I kept everything going. But going into a new school and seeing how different people, multiple people can be a teacher and they all did different stuff. They all, instead of following one protocol, it makes it difficult to see how students were assessed because I got some students that were assessed in number world. Some students, when all students, EC students, were supposed to get the same assessments. But if the ones that were done, I have to question if they were done with fidelity. So I have to go back and do them again, just because similar to what you're saying, questions wasn't answered, things wasn't in proper perspective for me to be able to read it. And then I just ended up having to go from, you know what I mean, ground zero, when it wouldn't have been that way if people would have been appropriately updating their assessment summary in ECAS and keeping track of the way that they progress monitor data. So I'm with you in that boat. Them questions are very significant and they do help and they make it easier to understand, what is needed and what you need to do as a teacher, as well as what the student needs to know, as well as what the parent needs to know. Like you were saying, and I'm sorry, y'all, I'm gonna keep talking, but like if a kid is doing a fast bridge assessment, if they're computing numbers and the kid understands, they understand how to subtract, but they have difficulties with place value. So they may have one problem wrong in the regrouping area, like in the tens place, because they have difficulties with place value. So it's not that they can't understand the multi-step of subtraction. They can't subtract. They just can't. They have difficulties with place value. And that's something that should be noted. Whereas me having to go through the work and look at, okay, what happened? Like, so yeah, I feel you. And I agree with what you were saying on that.
Yeah, because it was saying like in the book, it was saying like if you don't correctly identify the problem, then that's when you can't face it. Like that you can't develop good habits to serve the student.
And that's when
Like
the student have bad behaviors. That's when
right.
behaviors start.
And so you're not really serving them well. You know what I'm saying? And like so that's I don't not sure that I like them grading proficiency. Oh,
Mhm.
okay, they're proficient with stuff and you don't know if they truly mastered it or if they truly like how do you know if they truly mastered it? Like how are you giving them that grade of they mastered it? And then this whole idea of I'm giving everybody a 50 regardless. No ma'am, no sir.
I
Like
say
that
I do
doesn't
not
show me.
like that at all. I don't like it.
Mhm.
So to if you go by what it says in this book as far as using the target, are they able to do this regardless of, because when I grade myself, because my principal asked me, well, why did they get, because it was an A and B question. So they couldn't solve it, but they were able to explain to me how to solve it. So I told
Mhm.
her I struggled with if I was going to give them that point or not. So I decided to give them the point because they knew how to multiply, they knew how to divide it, they knew that they needed to compare both the ratios. Well,
Mhm.
somewhere along the line, they just misread it.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
so should I count them wrong? Like that's not necessarily they didn't master it, but but they still had an idea of what they were doing. So to me, they got the learning target of it,
Yeah.
but
Mhm.
they did not master.
They can't independently apply it on their own.
Right.
Yeah.
They did
I feel
not
like that's the
master
most
the
important
problem.
thing as long as they understand the concept of what they're doing. They may not get it right every single time, but if they're understanding what they're supposed to be doing and the concept of it, I feel like that should suffice. But you
Yeah,
know,
and see, I think for gen ed teachers, another thing with y'all is that that's true, Ryan, but y'all have to y'all have to keep teaching. Y'all have different standards and stuff. Y'all have to keep going based on whatever your curriculum is or whatever your units is. I know like with elementary CKLA and I think we're doing illustrative math. It's based on like a unit. So when we're on that unit, that's the time that we're spending on that. But then as a teacher, you have to keep moving on to try to get all of your content taught. So it's really hard to kind of give that. That's when I guess when small groups and stuff come into play, and I guess like those little times where you can allow students to practice on things that they may have deficits in. But I know that as like with Miss Olympia, like I know that that's probably difficult as a middle school teacher because, like I said, y'all gotta keep and high school too, Ryan, because y'all have a timeline of things. So it's really hard to kind of give that time to practice when you see a kid struggling in that area. And Guilford County kind of wants us to, they want the student to understand the concept, but they want the student to be able to independently apply it and
yeah.
be able to actually do it.
Mhm.
And sometimes we need a little bit more time to focus on that, to make them master, to be able to master it. And they don't get that. And I think that causes gaps too. But I think that the way that Guilford County schools do it, I think that should be kind of looked at too a little bit. But
Mhm.
yeah.
No,
You
I
know,
get
and you
that.
know what I not to change the subject, but you know what I also liked about, and I didn't say it, but the fact that they talked about extra credit and how you
Yeah.
address extra credit. Because
Yeah.
in fact, because I was giving extra credit, like, let me help you bring this grade up because our assessments is like 50% of their grade, and baby, everybody
Mhm.
don't test the same way. So let me give you an extra thing to get this grade up. But
Right.
I
They
like
saying
how they
that's
were
not a
saying,
good
like,
idea. Don't do that.
right,
Mhm.
extra credit is supposed to be for what you do know and how to show that you have this concept together and you've got this learning target and to help, it's almost like when you do that differentiation and you have that student that got everything together and you want to challenge that student to present something better or
Mhm.
present something extravagant or whatever, and so they do that extra project to show that they really got this together. I didn't think about it like that. I was like,
Mhm.
we done kind of took extra credit and changed it to something else. So I
Yeah.
was like,
I applaud
okay.
you for that because that's how you know that you're passionate about your babies and you want to give them chances to close gaps that you don't want them to have. So you taking that initiative as a teacher to help them get, because you like, no, look, baby, you got to be here. You got to have this 50%. You not here. I need you here. You're passionate and you're giving that opportunity. And I kind of disagree with it because I mean I get what they were saying. I get what they were saying, but I think that that is a teacher being passionate and ensuring that the child has opportunities to improve something that they have to be able to do. So I kind of feel like I agree with it, but then I don't agree with it because
Yeah.
extra work, extra credit may look different at different levels. So who's to say, you know what I mean? That's considered. We might not necessarily call it extra credit. We calling it extra support, but it's extra support to pull up what you already have to have. So
Right.
I wouldn't consider that extra credit. So I was a little torn in between how I felt with that with what they said about extra care credit. I didn't really agree with it.
Yeah, I'm with you too. I was kind of indifferent about it because I'm like, I see what they're saying, but at the same time, like, sometimes kids need a little extra help. And I know at my school, like they push extra credit for students who are
Mhm.
struggling a little bit. So they're like, hey, if you see that well, first of all, they're asking like, what is the problem? Why are they not, why did they get this grade? Why are they not doing well? And once you explain it to them, they're like, okay, well, offer extra credit or do this, do that, help them in this way. And I'm like, okay, well, if our schools are telling us to offer extra credit, like,
Who are you to say don't?
right, exactly.
But you know what? And I thought about that too, because I was like, okay, I'm with y'all. Now, I'm not saying that I necessarily agree with this, but can we not think about it in a way where we can agree with this book? agree with the way it says it, and then present it in a way that they are doing kind of like a PBL for
Mhm.
extra credit, so that they are showing us that they know what they're doing with the extra credit in a project like way. Because some kids can't do the work on pencil and paper. Some kids can't do it via assessment. So so when you give the extra credit, make it fun. So okay, here's your fun little project. Now present me this, and it still gives them the extra credit to bring up their grade, but it
Yeah,
also shows you, so that's how it made me think about it. Like, okay, it also shows me that you know what you're doing,
yeah,
but it's also easy enough for you to bring up your grade, but also challenging enough for you to think about a different way to present to me what you just learned.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. No, I get
You
that
know
because
what
you
I'm
definitely
saying?
don't want to just throw extra credit at them and then they're not getting anything out of it. So I definitely agree with what you're saying
Right,
in that
You want to
aspect.
make sure they meet in that standard. That's
Right,
what
yeah.
right.
and that's another
Yeah.
way to meet the standard, even if they can't independently do the multi-step of what they need. Like if they are struggling to, that's a different way. So it did say giving students multiple ways to provide concrete evidence, you know what I mean, giving them multiple ways, especially when a student got a disability, you have to give multiple ways. But
Mhm.
sometimes in the gen ed class, if there's another way to present that they understand that standard, that should be taken into consideration. So I do agree, and that goes back to perspective in my opinion. So I agree with you too on that, Olympia.
Yeah. So that's what I really enjoyed about the piece, because I was like, okay, that made me think maybe I can. And so I kind of tried that today, to be honest. Like I didn't give them like extra credit, extra credit. So I said, hey, I need you to present to me the ratio table, but I need you to do it on these posters. Even my students that could not do it on the test created a poster for me. Like I
Mm-hmm.
was like, dude, why you couldn't do this on the test? They
Because
were
Right.
you got
able to
a chance to be
explain to me.
creative. It was a creative
Right.
way.
It was a creative. So they did like like the stickets the big ones that you put on the
Yeah.
wall.
Mhm.
They did the table. They explained how they went from they were able to get per one, the
Mm-hmm.
per, so they knew that each one. So it was like every hour. So they knew that this person made $33 for 5 hours, and then they knew how much they made for 1 hour, and then they was
Mhm.
able to tell me for 7 hours. I said, why you didn't do this on the test?
Because
I'm
they
so
are
confused.
moving, interacting. It's a they're touching it. It's a different
Yeah.
way of learning. That's
So yeah.
dope.
Yeah. It's interesting when that happens when you give them one thing on the test and you give it to them in a different way and then they just like completely like show you that they can do it and then you're just like, okay,
Right.
Mhm.
It was
where was
the
this
same
person?
question. It
Right.
literally was the same question. I did not, all I did was change the numbers. It was the same
That's
question.
crazy.
And I said, are you kidding me? Like even my lowest student was able to create something, and they probably just got me the 1 hour. And they didn't do the second part. But listen, baby. Now I'm like, come on now. So yeah.
That's not me, and I know we had time. The last thing I had wanted to say is like I got a student who he when he reads out loud, he can comprehend what he reads. He cannot when he reads it with his eyes, he can fluently read, he reads with accuracy, he reads with expression, prosody, all of that. But if he answer them questions and he turn his work in, all of them are wrong. But if I listen to him read and he read the questions out loud, he's going to get them correct, and it's because he hears himself. So like he needs an accommodation of being able to test in a one-on-one setting so he can hear himself read aloud. And I've had issues and pushback with my school because they're like, okay, well, Miss Ware, if you give him that accommodation, we need more test administrators. But I'm like, either way it go, legal. I'm telling you though, his specific learning disability, it does require him to hear himself. It makes a complete difference. Like if he takes any test and he can read the test to himself and read the questions, he can answer them with accuracy. But if he just answer it and read it, he read it. I watched him read it and I watched him underline and go back in the story. But for whatever reason, all of these answers are wrong. So
So
yeah,
I didn't mean to cut you off. Are we at time?
we should
Are we
be.
almost at the time?
Oh yeah, we are.
Okay, so we gotta ask our questions. That's why I was like, oh, Jab, we gotta get our questions.
Oh no, sorry. I had a question. Now I gotta try to go back and find. I got so engrossed in the conversation. I won't even think about my questions.
I know
Oh,
I didn't want to forget because I didn't want to, I got one question while you're thinking. So,
Okay.
do you think you'll use a computer program to to do your grade management?
Yes,
Yeah, probably.
Why? So we can have more detail, you know.
because you don't have to manually do
Yeah.
your own stuff, and you already have a that takes away a lot of time. Time
Yeah.
consumption really comes with manually grading, so having a system to do it and to do your percentages, and that really helps.
Yeah. And just having everything in front of you right there. And then I just feel like it would be more helpful to do it that way.
Mhm.
Okay.
The question I had, let me see. What are some ways that you guys think that students could participate in their own record keeping, and what benefits do you think it will bring to have them involved?
The student data binder, a running record, like an actual live running record log, to where they can see dates, they can see percentages, they can see their BOYs, MOYs, EOYs, they can see all of those things, and you have conferences with them and talk to them and allow them to help progress monitor themselves as well as what you're doing, and just kind of let them see it and talk to them about it all the time.
I would agree with that, and then I also would think adding a rubric for like that is kid accessible or student friendly, and then having them because when they did their study guide, I kind of did something similar, and so they were able to document whether they felt like they achieved that goal, if they understood the lesson, and then they had to write out like a little sentence or like phrases about how they felt about the particular lesson, so they was able to give themselves feedback. So that's another way that you can kind of keep that data. They can keep their own data, and then you can kind of conference with them about it.
Hmm.
Yep. Now I think, do we have one more question? Maybe.
Um,
My question would be, what um yeah, well, she already said that one. Do you think that summative or formative assessment, um, do you think, how can I say it? Do you think that they both are equally important, summative and formative assessments? Or do you think that formative assessments are more important than summative?
um, I think they're both equally important, but in different ways. I think it honestly just kind of depends on what type of assessment you're doing at the moment. I don't think that one is more important than the other, if that makes sense.
And then I'm going to be the devil advocate,
Mhm.
and I'm going to say that I think that sometimes summative kind of it kind of makes them go back and remember everything versus you just getting what they know in the moment, and you're giving them a lot. So you're giving them a lot, like, if you're on a unit for 8 weeks and then you try to go back and try to get them to remember everything they learned in the first 8 weeks, honey, these kids is different. So you
Right.
got the out, and you didn't give them a computer or a phone to remember it on.
Mhm.
Mm-mm. So take
Yeah.
what you can get. You take what you can get. What they learned in that moment, and let's move on. Okay, they learned it then. Let's move on. Okay, that's what they learned. Okay, it's time to move on. We are moving on to the next. That's how I feel. Okay, because I didn't watch these poor babies struggle and look crazy when it's time for some of them, and it's like, okay, why we just couldn't take the information we did in the moment that they made that 100 on, or they made that
Yeah,
95 on,
that's
Mhm.
or
yeah,
they made,
that's
you know what I'm saying? And then you go,
yeah.
and then that's exactly what my principal asked me today. Well, what happened? Ma'am, they forgot. They
Yeah.
forgot.
That's why I think
That's simply
formative
that.
assessments are much more significant. I think they both are, I mean, they both are significant, but I think formative assessments are more beneficial to students.
Mm-hmm.
Because summative assessments, like you said, it applies over time. So that is overwhelming to a student to test them on content that they learned over a year. When you have winter break, when you have remote learning days, when you have all of these different things happening, absences. So like, yeah, I
Yeah,
think that those summative
it's definitely a
assessments
lot.
are not good ways of measuring growth, but no, that's all we have to do. So, but yeah, that was
Okay.
my questions. I think we did good tonight, ladies.
Yeah, we did. I definitely enjoyed this conversation. Look, we got so caught up, we forgot that we were supposed to be asking questions.
Yeah, we did. Yeah,
It was
this
definitely
was
good
great.
though. But this was chapter 9, so we will see each other again for chapter 10 next week.
All
All right.
righty.